What happens when a carefully orchestrated television interview spirals completely out of control, and two powerful women find themselves locked in a battle that neither saw coming. The morning started like any other at Studio 1A, but within minutes, what was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance would explode into one of the most shocking confrontations in live television history. If you want to see how this incredible story unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts, because what you are about to witness will leave you absolutely speechless. Savannah Guthrie adjusted her notes one final time as the cameras rolled, her professional smile firmly in place. Across from her, Meghan Markle sat with perfect posture, her hands folded gracefully in her lap, every inch the polished duchess the world had come to know. The studio lights cast their familiar warm glow, and everything appeared picture perfect. For what everyone expected to be another standard celebrity interview. "Good morning, Meghan, and thank you for joining us on the Today Show," Savannah began, her voice carrying that practiced television warmth. "You look absolutely radiant this morning." "Thank you, Savannah. It is wonderful to be here, Meghan," replied her smile, equally camera-ready. "I have always admired your work, and I am excited to share some of the projects I have been working on." Savannah nodded, glancing down at her prepared questions. "Let me start by asking about your latest venture. You have been keeping quite busy since stepping back from royal duties, and I understand you have some exciting announcements to make today." "That is correct," Meghan said, straightening slightly. "I have been incredibly fortunate to work with some amazing organizations, and I am passionate about using my platform to amplify voices that often go unheard. Today, I wanted to talk specifically about our new initiative focused on maternal health in underserved communities." The interview was proceeding exactly as planned, with both women settling into their familiar rhythms. Savannah asked follow-up questions about funding and implementation, while Meghan provided thoughtful, well-rehearsed responses about impact and outreach. The production team behind the cameras relaxed slightly, confident they were capturing exactly the kind of content their audience expected. "This sounds like incredibly important work," Savannah said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "But I have to ask, and I think our viewers are curious about this too, how do you balance these professional commitments with your role as a mother and wife? There have been quite a few reports recently about the challenges of managing it all." Meghan's smile flickered for just a fraction of a second, so briefly that most viewers would never notice. But Savannah, with years of experience reading her interview subjects, caught it immediately. "Well, Savannah, I think that question itself reveals something quite telling about the way women, particularly women of color, are discussed in the media," Meghan said, her tone remaining pleasant, but with a subtle edge creeping in. "I am curious, do you ask male executives how they balance their board positions with being fathers?" Savannah blinked, momentarily thrown off by the unexpected pushback. She had asked similar questions hundreds of times without incident, but something in Meghan's response suggested this interview might not follow the script either of them had anticipated. "That is actually a fair point," Savannah said, recovering quickly. "I suppose we do tend to frame these questions differently, depending on gender. But surely you can understand that our audience is interested in hearing about your personal life, as well as your professional work. You have been quite open about both in previous interviews." "I have been open when I chose to be open," Meghan replied, her posture becoming slightly more rigid. "There is a significant difference between sharing personal experiences to help others and being expected to perform my private life for public consumption. I would hope that a journalist of your caliber would understand that distinction." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Savannah felt her jaw tighten slightly, though she maintained her professional composure. Behind the cameras, producers exchanged worried glances as they sensed the interview beginning to veer into uncharted territory. "Of course I understand that distinction," Savannah said, her voice remaining steady but with a new firmness. "However, I think it is important to acknowledge that public figures, especially those who have chosen to maintain their public profiles after leaving official duties, do have certain expectations from their audiences. That comes with the territory, does it not?" Meghan's eyes flashed, and for a moment, the carefully constructed facade of the perfect duchess cracked just enough to reveal something much more raw underneath. "Expectations," she repeated slowly, as if testing the word. "That is an interesting choice of words, Savannah. Tell me, What exactly do you think the public expects from me that they do not expect from other public figures? And please, be specific." Savannah realized she was walking into a minefield, but years of journalism had taught her not to back down when a story was developing right in front of her. She straightened in her chair, meeting Meghan's gaze directly. "I think the public expects honesty and consistency," she said carefully. "And when someone has spoken extensively about their experiences with media scrutiny and privacy concerns, but then continues to give high-profile interviews and maintain a significant media presence, there can be some confusion about the message being sent." The silence that followed was deafening. Meghan stared at Savannah for a long moment, and everyone in the studio could feel the tension crackling between them like electricity before a storm. "Are you suggesting that I am being dishonest?" Meghan asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "I am not suggesting anything," Savannah replied evenly. "I am simply pointing out what some critics have observed and giving you an opportunity to address those observations directly." "Critics," Meghan said with a bitter laugh. "Let me guess, these are the same critics who have spent years dissecting every word I speak, every outfit I wear, every expression that crosses my face. The same critics who somehow manage to find fault with charitable work and community outreach." Savannah felt the interview slipping away from her, but her instincts as a journalist kicked in. When a subject started getting defensive, that usually meant you were getting close to something important. "Meghan, no one is criticizing your charitable work," she said firmly. "But you have to admit that some of your public statements have raised legitimate questions about your motivations and your relationship with the media you claim to want to avoid." "My motivations?" Meghan's voice rose slightly, though she was clearly fighting to maintain control. "My motivation is to make a positive difference in the world. My motivation is to use whatever influence I have to help people who need help. If that somehow threatens people, then perhaps they should examine their own motivations." The interview had officially gone off the rails, and both women knew it. But neither seemed willing to step back from the precipice they had created. Savannah could feel her years of professional training warring with her growing frustration. She had conducted thousands of interviews, handled hostile politicians, confronted corporate executives caught in scandals, but something about Meghan's dismissive tone was getting under her skin in a way she had not expected. "Meghan, I think you are misunderstanding the nature of journalism," Savannah said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "When public figures make contradictory statements or behave in ways that seem inconsistent with their stated values, it is our job to ask questions. That is not a personal attack. That is accountability." "Accountability?" Meghan leaned forward, her composure finally beginning to crack completely. "Is that what you call the relentless scrutiny that has followed me since the day I started dating my husband? Is that what you call the articles questioning whether I was suitable for the royal family? Is that what you call the constant criticism of how I hold my baby, how I close a car door, how I sign my name?" "Those are not questions I've asked," Savannah shot back, her own patience wearing thin. "I am asking you about statements you have made in interviews you chose to give. If you want to discuss media treatment, then let me ask you this directly. Do you think your decision to give a tell-all interview while your husband's grandfather was dying in the hospital showed the judgment you are asking us to respect?" The question hit like a physical blow, and Meghan's face went pale. Several crew members behind the cameras stopped what they were doing, sensing that something explosive was about to happen. "How dare you?" Meghan said, her voice trembling with anger. "How dare you sit there and lecture me about judgment when you have built your entire career on exploiting people's pain for television ratings? You want to talk about accountability? Let me ask you about your accountability." "Excuse me," Savannah said, genuinely taken aback by the sudden personal attack. "Do you remember the interview you did with the mother whose child was killed in that school shooting?" Meghan continued, her voice rising. "Do you remember how you kept pushing her to cry on camera? Do you remember how you asked her to describe her child's last moments? That was journalism. That was accountability." Savannah felt her face flush with anger. The interview Meghan was referencing had been one of the most difficult of her career, and she had spent sleepless nights questioning her own approach. To have it thrown back at her like this, on live television, was a line she had never expected anyone to cross. "That interview was handled with complete sensitivity and respect," Savannah said through gritted teeth. "That mother chose to share Her story because she wanted to prevent other families from experiencing what she went through. Do not presume to judge situations you know nothing about. I know enough about exploitation to recognize it when I see it, Meghan fired back. And I know enough about the media to understand that your concern for accountability is incredibly selective. Where was your accountability when you failed to fact-check stories about me? Where was your journalistic integrity when you repeated tabloid rumors as if they were verified news? We have never reported unverified information about you on this program, Savannah said, her voice now fully heated. And if you have specific complaints about our coverage, I would be happy to address them. But what I will not do is sit here and let you make false accusations about my integrity or my profession. False accusations. Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me tell you about false accusations, Savannah. Let me tell you about waking up every morning to headlines claiming I made Kate cry when the exact opposite happened. Let me tell you about reading articles saying I was difficult to work with, based on anonymous sources who never even met me. Let me tell you about seeing my father's private letter published in newspapers, edited to make me look heartless. Then, why not address those specific issues instead of attacking journalism as a whole? Savannah demanded. Why not provide your side of the story with facts instead of complaints about unfair treatment? You say you want accountability, but accountability works both ways. I have provided my side, Meghan said, her voice now shaking with emotion. I have given interviews. I have shared my experiences. I have been more transparent than any member of the royal family in history, but nothing I say is ever enough, because the narrative has already been written. I am the difficult American actress who disrupted the perfect British institution. Maybe the narrative exists because your actions have created it, Savannah said, abandoning any pretense of diplomatic interviewing. Maybe people question your motives because you have given them reasons to question them. You spoke about wanting privacy while giving interviews to millions of people. You talked about being silenced while having access to the biggest media platforms in the world. You claimed to want to serve while walking away from the one role that would have allowed you to serve in a meaningful way. The studio fell completely, silent except for the hum of the cameras, which continued rolling despite the obvious desire of everyone present to look away from what was happening. Meghan stared at Savannah with a mixture of fury and disbelief. You have absolutely no idea what you are talking about, Meghan said slowly, each word dripping with contempt. You sit in your comfortable studio, reading from your prepared questions. Thinking you understand complex situations based on gossip and speculation, you have never lived under the kind of scrutiny I have faced. You have never had your mental health attacked by an entire industry. You have never had to choose between your family's safety and your duty to an institution. And you have never had to work your way up through local news, covering school board meetings and county fairs. Learning to respect the responsibility that comes with having a platform, Savannah shot back. You were handed one of the most powerful positions in the world, and instead of using it to make the kind of difference you claim to care about, you turned it into a personal grievance tour. A grievance tour. Meghan's voice was now dangerously quiet again. Is that what you call speaking truth to power? Is that what you call protecting my children from the same treatment that killed my husband's mother? Do not, Savannah said firmly, do not invoke Princess Diana to justify your choices. That is beneath even you. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone in the studio held their breath, waiting to see how Meghan would respond to what felt like the final line being crossed. The silence that followed Savannah's words was deafening. Meghan's face went through a series of expressions: shock, hurt, and finally, cold fury. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than any shout could have beneath me. She repeated slowly, "You think it is beneath me to honor the memory of a woman who was hounded to death by the very media machine you represent. You think it is beneath me to protect my family from the same fate. I think it is beneath you to use tragedy as a shield." Every time someone asks you a difficult question, Savannah replied, her own voice now ice-cold. Diana's death was a horrible tragedy. But it does not give you carte blanche to avoid any criticism or scrutiny of your own choices. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward. The sudden movement caused several crew members to step forward instinctively, unsure of what was about to happen. "Criticism," Meghan said, her voice rising to a level that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. "You call this criticism? You have spent the last 20 minutes attacking my character, questioning my motives, and now you have the audacity to tell me I cannot speak about my own husband's mother. Who exactly do you think you are?" Savannah remained seated, but her posture was rigid with tension. "I am a journalist doing my job, which is something you seem fundamentally incapable of understanding. Every question I have asked you today has been fair and based on your own public statements and actions." "Fair?" Meghan laughed bitterly. "There is nothing fair about this ambush. You invited me here under false pretenses, pretending this would be about my charitable work, and instead you have turned it into a character assassination." "I invited you here to answer questions," Savannah said, standing up to meet Meghan at eye level. "If you cannot handle questions about your public statements and behavior, then perhaps you should reconsider your decision to remain a public figure." "Do not tell me what I should reconsider," Meghan snapped. "You do not get to dictate the terms of my existence or judge whether I deserve to have a voice in public discourse. I have every right to speak about issues I care about without submitting to this kind of harassment." "Harassment?" Savannah's voice rose to match Meghan's volume. "Asking you to explain contradictions in your own statements is harassment. Expecting you to take responsibility for your choices is harassment. You want to talk about harassment? Let me tell you about the messages I receive every day from people who think asking tough questions makes me the enemy." "Maybe those messages exist because you have earned them," Meghan said coldly. "Maybe people are tired of watching journalists like you tear down anyone who dares to challenge the status quo or speak uncomfortable truths about powerful institutions." The two women were now standing barely 3 feet apart, their voices carrying clearly throughout the studio despite the fact that neither was technically shouting. The crew had stopped even pretending to work, transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them. "You want to talk about uncomfortable truths?" Savannah said, taking a step closer. "Here is an uncomfortable truth for you. You married into the most privileged position imaginable, a position that millions of people would give anything to have, and instead of using it to make a real difference, you turned it into a platform for your own victimhood." "My victimhood?" Meghan's voice cracked. "Slightly, you think racism is victimhood. You think having my mental health ignored while I was contemplating suicide is victimhood? You think watching my husband suffer while being unable to protect him is victimhood? I think using those real struggles to deflect from legitimate criticism is manipulative," Savannah said, without hesitation. "I think weaponizing your pain to avoid accountability is exactly the kind of behavior that makes people question your sincerity." Meghan's face went completely white, and for a moment, everyone in the studio thought she might actually collapse. Instead, she drew herself up to her full height and looked Savannah directly in the eyes. "You are a disgrace to your profession," she said quietly, but with such venom that the words seemed to echo. "You sit there in your position of privilege, protected by your network and your salary, and you have the nerve to lecture me about accountability while contributing nothing positive to the world except manufactured controversy and cheap ratings. And you are exactly what everyone suspected you were from the beginning," Savannah replied with equal coldness. "A calculating opportunist who saw the royal family as a stepping stone to fame and fortune. And when that did not work out the way you planned, you decided to burn it all down rather than accept responsibility for your own failures." The words hit Meghan like a physical blow, and she actually staggered backwards slightly. The hurt that flashed across her face was so raw and genuine that several crew members looked away, unable to watch what felt like a public execution. Meghan whispered, tears forming in her eyes for the first time during the entire confrontation. "How dare you reduce my entire life, my marriage, my children, to some calculated scheme for fame? You do not know me. You do not know what I have sacrificed or what I have endured." "I know what you have chosen to tell the world," Savannah said, though some of the fire had gone out of her voice as she saw Meghan's obvious distress. "And based on those choices, based on your own words and actions, I am asking you to explain the contradictions." "There are no contradictions," Meghan said, her voice now shaking with emotion. "There is only a woman who tried to serve, who tried to use her platform for good, who tried to protect her family, and who has been punished for it every single day since. If you cannot see that, if you cannot understand that, then this conversation is over." She turned toward the exit, but Savannah's voice stopped her. "Running away again," Savannah called out. "Is that your solution to every difficult situation? When things get tough, Just walk away and blame everyone else for the problems you created. Meghan stopped walking, but did not turn around. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible, but everyone in the studio heard every word. "I am not running away from anything," she said. "I am walking away from people who are determined to destroy me, no matter what I do or say. I am protecting myself from individuals who mistake cruelty for journalism and bullying for accountability." She began walking again, and this time Savannah let her go. The cameras continued rolling as Meghan reached the studio exit, paused for just a moment, as if she might turn around, and then disappeared through the doorway without looking back. The studio remained silent for several long seconds before Savannah turned back toward the cameras, her professional composure somehow still intact despite everything that had just transpired. "We will be right back after this break," she said. To the camera, her voice steady but her hands visibly shaking. And there you have it, one of the most explosive confrontations in television history, where two powerful women let their professional facades crumble and revealed the raw emotions underneath. What did you think about this incredible clash? Was Savannah right to push for accountability? Or did she cross the line into personal attack? Did Meghan have valid points about media treatment? Or was she deflecting from legitimate criticism? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.